Welcome back. In today's episode, our guest wakes up one day in jail, goes to court that day, only to find out that the judge recognizes him from the news last night. A high-speed chase through the town. Not a good day. How did he go from one of the lowest points in his life to turning it all around in 18 months? Sit back and enjoy.
Welcome to this edition of Peak Performers Podcast with your host, Thor Conklin. Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Welcome back. We're with Vidal Cisneros Jr. He is a speaker, a writer, an author, and a coach. In 2009, after leaving a high-paying construction career to ignite the dream, he found himself facing insurmountable personal adversity while overcoming marital betrayal. He woke up one day in a jail cell to the news of being the driver of a high-speed chase. He had hit rock bottom. However, just 18 months later, he found that going through the worst nightmare, he discovered his life's purpose. His story has been featured in Chicken Soup for the Soul, Think Possible. He's currently working on Thriving Beyond, From Tragedy to Triumph. He's got an amazing podcast. Please welcome Vidal.
It is an honor to be here. Thank you, Thor, for having me.
So did I forget anything?
Not at all, my friend. Thank you for having me. And it is an honor to be here. And man, I've been hearing great things about your podcast.
Well, thank you. And I love yours as well. So I enjoyed that. So give us some more background of what happened. I mean, it sounds like you were rocking and rolling and all of a sudden things just fell apart.
Yeah, it was a roller coaster ride, Thor. I am not going to digress from that point. That's the title of the book, Thriving Beyond, From Tragedy to Triumph. And there was some devastating moments. I had been through a very mundane career as a project site manager for many years in the freeway construction industry. The only thing back then that had me rocking and rolling with the adrenaline rushes were my brushes with traffic and working with law enforcement very close. And the adrenaline there, after a while, it started to fade. And I started seeing that there's a ceiling to this dead-end job, and I wasn't going anywhere. So then I ended up hiring a success coach. And from there, 3 months before the devastation really took off and hit home and flipped my whole world upside down, I had no idea what I was up against. So just to kind of give you the crux of what I was facing, my wife one day mentions that I have to tell you something. And when you know something's wrong, you have these spidey senses that go off and you're like, oh my God, something's not right. But you are off on this dream chasing path. You're just lit up. You're on fire. It's almost like you're saved again. And you have this faith that, you know what, no matter what, things will work out. Things will work out. That was my belief and still is my belief. But then she confesses what I already kind of knew in the back of my mind, but we can't believe the first phase is denial, my friends. And it's okay. We all go through it. We're in denial. It can't happen to me. There's no possible way. What did I do to deserve this, right? So unbeknownst to me, she says, yes, I'm seeing someone. And I wasn't surprised because for many years, I was a workaholic, working endless hours. I wasn't there for all the events that my two daughters had. And it was frustrating. It got to a point where I knew I was at the end of my rope and something had to change. So I took that leap of faith, left that career behind, Thor, and lit up on fire for personal development and self-help. I ended up at that point where God, source, whatever your belief is, put me there for a reason. I didn't know, but she said in that moment, I'm seeing someone else and there's more. As I tried to take this in, I said, okay, there's got to be some light at the end of this tunnel right now. Something. It's not mine, right? Because she said the more part is that she's pregnant, right? Wow. And And then she said, it's not yours. But my belief was, it is mine, right? It has to be. There's no way that it could be that devastating. Come on now. I don't deserve this. And I can laugh about this now, Thor. So this is years back in 2009. And with the economy crashing, everything, things were looking up for little old me in that devastating economic crash. And then everything just hit that rock bottom point. As I go further with my story, it goes even farther rock bottom than that.
Amazing. What was that point that just turned things around? Was there a moment that just, no more, this is it, this is the change?
I had to hit some other rock bottom points to finally hit that last one that really transformed everything. To answer your question, there wasn't one specific thing that said, that's it, other than when I was plastered all over the news. I wake up in a jail cell. I find myself going through withdrawals. I had become a situational alcoholic. As a coping mechanism, my parents and my father specifically, I had subconsciously modeled his behavior of coping with stress, and drinking was one of them. I began to just drink heavily during the week, and that was not like me. I was never a huge drinker at all, maybe at some, weddings, birthdays, so on and so forth. But I found myself at a point where something's about to break, like something's about to go wrong. I can't live every single day jumping behind the wheel, driving inebriated to a point where I almost want to just like flip the car over, knowing I wouldn't do that to myself, but the thought is still there. And finally it all came to a halt when I ended up waking up in a jail cell 4 days straight, being arrested. I had lost a sheriff deputy twice, and nothing I'm proud of. And I ended up crashing into another driver that was inebriated after I lost a sheriff deputy twice. And mind you, the ironic part is I used to work with sheriff deputies. So that's where another part of me felt almost untouchable, because I did have, in a sense, a get out of jail card by dropping names and so on and so forth. So I ended up crashing into another inebriated driver after I lost a sheriff deputy twice. And that was one of those moments that I'll never forget. And luckily, the driver only suffered a broken collarbone, and there was another passenger. And because of that injury, I ended up serving 6 months incarcerated. But the transformation point came, Thor, when I was incarcerated for those first 4 days upon my initial arrest. And when the sheriff deputy arrested me, he knew something was wrong when he saw my record was squeaky clean and I was 30-something. And he asked me, he said, okay, what's really going on with you, man? Because...
Right, there's more to this.
Right. So I shared my story with him, and I was sobering up in the back of the squad car and dropped some names and told him who I knew. And he said to me, why didn't you tell me this before? I would have let you go. And in that instant, my soul just screamed out, we need help. That's why we need help. Because at some point or another, if I wouldn't have hurt myself, obviously I hurt that driver, but I could have done more severe damage. That pattern, I would have been stuck in that pattern for a long time. So
right.
Breaking myself out of that pattern with that situation, I found myself waking up into that cell, facing a judge, and the judge says, hey, I saw you on the news last night. And that was a rock bottom moment right there as well.
Yeah, that's never a good day. But, sometimes our worst days turn out to be our best days, because this was the turning point for you.
Absolutely.
So in jail, I understand that you read a book that also helped you kind of turn things around.
That is correct. And that book is titled Chicken Soup for the Soul, the original. It's 20-some years since it's been originally published.
And then you turn around and now you're contributing editor to that book. How does that feel?
That is the culmination, the full circle moment that I experienced last year. When I was first published in that book, I got some notoriety, and it was phenomenal sharing that and going back to 2009 when I found myself sitting there for 4 days going through withdrawals And I knew I had to do something radical, Thor, in order to change myself. I mean, this is the thesis of every peak performer is you have to break yourself out of the pattern by doing something radically different. So what I did is I began to fast and pray, and I prayed for my estranged wife at the time, the person she was seeing, and the unborn child. And I did it to plant seeds and to put myself in a new state of gratitude. And by fasting, I would give my trays when I was initially incarcerated to other people that were Christians or reading anything positive. I would just give away my trays. And then I began to see that the withdrawals were starting to go into remission. And then I found myself just vibrating on another level that I'd never vibrated before. And I know it might sound woo-woo and, all fluffy and stuff, but that's where the transformation point really started, and the trajectory upward onto the triumph began after that.
That's awesome. I find that with so many peak performers, and a lot of times for them, it comes in the form of when they stop trying to figure out what they can get and then turn to what they can give, that's when that vibration or that change occurred. It sounds very similar in your case.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
Tell me a little bit about your morning routine.
A morning routine that I implemented years back, and I learned this from a successful coach, that he taught me that gratitude in the morning, you want to wake up. So the first time your foot touches the ground, say thank, and the second foot, you, right? Get yourself in that state of gratitude right away, first thing in the morning. So focusing on the wins for the day and the wins that you received the earlier day, the day before, that's kind of where I count my wins and I'm thankful for what I've done. And a win can be anything. I know a lot of people talk about wins, but I'm not talking about the huge wins. I'm talking about the little wins that matter to you. You talked to your kids today. You called your mother. You followed up and you called somebody back. You listened to a podcast episode about personal development the whole way through, and you listened to it again and you took notes on it. Give yourself a pat on the back for those things. Those are wins. And put yourself in a state of gratitude by thanking every single breath you take, by thanking every single hair on your head, by focusing on everything that's abundant in your world that we take for granted. And that's how back then I was able to shift from such a depressing and tragic state into finding the person of my dreams, into finding what I'm meant to do in the world and the mission that I'm meant to just be here for.
Yeah, that's awesome. I did a podcast the other day on gratitude, and literally I was walking through the parking lot and found a penny on the floor, on the ground, and picked it up. And I always do that. I don't care what it is. I just thank the universe, thank God for whatever comes my way.
Amen. Amen to that.
It's a great way to live.
Absolutely.
So many people think that you've got to start something new in order to make that quantum leap. And so often is you have to stop something, or you have to bring the end to a relationship in order to allow the room for something great.
Absolutely. The vacuum law. And that's exactly what happened is when I stepped into this affirmation, and I like to encapsulate this kind of like a metaphor that if you have your hands and you're holding something tight, when you want something to happen so bad, you want somebody to stay with you, you want everything to work out, and you're just hanging on, and your knuckles are all white, you're not going to receive the blessings that are coming from heaven down to you if you don't let go and open your hands completely and put your head down and receive it. A lot of times we feel that we don't deserve it, Thor. And that's where I was. And finally, I just got into that state of letting go and letting anything that I'm supposed to receive come into my life and feel that I know with every ounce of my soul, I deserve it. Too many times we just sabotage ourselves by telling our internal selves that we don't deserve it.
Yeah. I teach my clients all the time, when you receive a compliment, accept it, take it in. You do not want to reject that. Feel that goodness that someone else wants to bestow upon you.
Amen.
We've all been given great advice throughout life, and we've all been given some not so great advice. Tell us some of the best advice you've ever been given.
Some of the best advice that I was given was years ago by my grandmother. And this is like an old saying within, you could say, the Latino community or the Mexican community. And my grandmother, sweet lady, she would say, careful for the company that you keep, because who you walk with, you will become. So show me who you walk with, and I'll show you who you are.
So important.
And that was the best advice that I've received. That has been a lifetime of just going back to that. And now I look at my life and I'm like, holy cow, that matters big time.
Give me some of your most important daily habits.
One of the habits that I love to implement is calling my daughters and asking them if they wrote in their gratitude journal. And then if they did, having them send me a picture of that, and then me having to send them something back. So that's kind of something that I've done to stay connected with them as a co-parent and a divorcee. My thing is I have to keep showing up in their lives somehow, some way, and see what's going on in their lives, because they're so susceptible to society and anything that's out there. So I just want to make sure they're doing okay. And that's kind of a habit that I try to implement as much as possible with them.
I love that. And share with the audience about how many things that you feel you should be grateful for each day and write down.
At least 20. Now, you can start off, listeners, right now with 200. A list of 200
This is
great.
the Peak Performers podcast. So, I've heard that 200 number. Don't be starting with the 20 with these guys and these gals.
Yes,
we have a much higher
performers.
standard here.
I love it. There you go. 200. Dig deep. Go all the way back to the beginning of your existence. You learn how to walk, crawl, so on and so forth. You learn the alphabet. You want to write down you're grateful for every letter that you learn. Go back. This creates momentum in your mindset that anything that you focus on can pay dividends, and give yourself some credit. It's your mindset that we can either accelerate it forward or we can accelerate it completely backwards. It's if you're not growing, you're dying. I know you guys hear this stuff all the time, but it rings true. And that's why if we're transparent with our children and show them, hey, I'm not just talking about it, I'm going to show you too that I'm doing it. This is my gratitude journal, hun. This is kind of what I wrote. Let me read some of what you have, and so on and so forth. And that just creates some synergy, right?
Yeah, and kids don't do what we tell them to do. They model what we do. Who holds you accountable?
I have a lot of coaches in my life, a coach for everything. And that's what I highly recommend everybody do. And I like to connect other people as well, that if I can't serve them, I know someone that can. And that's really where I excel as well, is connecting other coaches with clients and so on and so forth. And it isn't just for the reciprocity purpose of it. It's because I understand that I can't serve everyone. When we think that we can serve everyone, we serve no one, right? Jack of all trades, master of none. So that I've learned my lesson years ago, and that's how you really regain trust with your clients, when they respect your integrity that way.
If you had to go back 10 years and you had the ability to do something differently, not regretful, but just wanted to do something differently or better, what would you do?
Great question. Man, no matter what, you won't make it out alive. That's what I would tell myself. So live every day loving life and grateful for each breath, because each breath is worth more than all the pain that you're going to be in, all the obstacles you're going to face. And it's not going to get easier unless you focus on what you're grateful for. Just put yourself in that attitude of gratitude. I know this episode, it has been a redundant theme, but it has gotten myself to that point where no matter what I'm facing, there's always going to be larger mountains to climb, especially if you're on this dream chasing path. And it only gets easier when you focus on appreciating every moment in life.
In the area of gratitude, when you're grateful, anger doesn't exist. When you're grateful, sadness doesn't exist. When you're grateful, fear doesn't exist. So it's such a powerful emotion.
Amen. Speaker, brother. Worry, that doesn't exist. Anxiety, nope.
Yep, absolutely. And it's like anything else. It's like a muscle. You start off by forming a habit of getting on your knees or just stopping for a moment and saying, thank you. Thank you for this. Thankful. I just choose everything. Here's one of my core beliefs. I believe that life happens for me, not to me. So even when things don't go exactly the way I want them to go, maybe there's a bigger picture, a bigger game going on that I'm not aware of, and I have to let this particular thing go in order to get the really great stuff that's coming my way.
And that's the painful part for a lot of us, Thor. I mean, back then, when I was going through that painful time, it was so hard to walk away from the whole white picket fence and the whole 9 yards reality of life back then, and especially to be outside of a house with my daughters. It was hard. But as soon as I let go, a new life, a new identity came. I evolved. I thrived. It isn't just about surviving. This is what I talk about on my podcast as well. It's not about just surviving. Anybody can recover. Anybody can say, yes, I've recovered from alcoholism and so on and so forth, physical abuse. But in order to thrive, we have to evolve. We have to grow. There has to be an upward trajectory. And that is the essence of a thriver, not just being a survivor.
I went through a divorce also, the effects that it had on the kids, but I can look back at it now and go, oh my God, what an opportunity I now have to actually get the relationship that I've always dreamed of, always deserved. And, at this point, I'm grateful for my ex-wife to be able to have the courage to step up and say, this is not working the way it should.
Exactly. I agree with you. We think that sometimes the most painful things that we fear, that we just fear, sometimes we bring upon those things upon ourselves, and they're really lessons in order for us to grow. And we have to stop being afraid and let them in our lives and find out what they're going to teach us so we can evolve and not just survive, right?
Absolutely. If you had the opportunity to spend an hour with someone, anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and what would you ask him or her?
Great question. There's a couple people that come into mind. I am a huge Michael Jordan fan. The one thing that I would ask him is, can I interview you for my podcast, brother?
Well, have you done that yet?
Not yet. And the reason why is because I want to pick his brain and figure out what made him thrive through all the challenges. A lot of people might know some of the public obstacles that he faced, but he also faced other challenges, just reading his biographies and so on and so forth, before he joined the Chicago Bulls. And when he was in college and when he was in high school, he actually faced challenges where there was death close to his circle. One of his girlfriends passed away through a drowning incident, and then a friend of his also through a drowning incident. So he actually has a fear of water. So I would love to pick his brain because he is the epitome to be of a basketball player, of what anybody should strive for. So if he could overcome those challenges and hurdles at such a young age, I want to pick his brain and find how his mind ticks, right?
Absolutely. Michael, if you're listening out there, there's going to be contact information for Vidal in the show notes.
Yes.
Pick up the phone and call him. You never know, brother.
That's it.
What do you wish you had started earlier?
This dream chasing journey. I started a little bit too late, but I don't regret it at all. Because the dead-end job, that dead-end road construction career, it gave me so much insight into what's possible. Because that last season that I worked, I really burnt myself out, Thor, for a reason. I was working 2 weeks. Well, I worked 2 weeks straight, 90 plus hours. And I'm not making this up. That last season, I averaged 75 hours for that whole summer. And when I saw that I can work 90 hours in 2 weeks straight, I was like, holy cow. And then lead a whole crew and have them believing that they can do it too. That just lit me up and opened up a whole new world. And you know how it is. Once a mind is expanded, it can't go back to its original size again. And that's what happened to me. My limiting beliefs, they just began to deteriorate, and I started erasing them. And that's when the upward trajectory and curiosity. I wish I would have been more curious a lot sooner. And that's the one thing I love about kids, is that they're so curious. Kids teach us so much. My youngest daughter, she is so headstrong, and ever since she was a baby, she would just jump headfirst off the bed, just fearless. And I think, honestly, because of her, she's taught me a lot with personal development.
Yeah, kids are fearless. Speaking of which, what have you been afraid to try?
Well, I'm going to tell you guys a little secret. Since we were talking about fear of swimming, I don't know how to swim. So that is something that I want to overcome. That's something that my girlfriend as well, she's trying to help me overcome that. And I was just never formally taught. My parents were like, no, we're not going to teach you how to swim, because there was that fear that, no, we have, people that drowned in the family and so on and so forth. And that's it. I got to break those chains. I got to step up to myself. So
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And what's great about stuff like that is when you break through that fear, it has a compounding effect, because the next time when you face something else, who knows, calling Michael Jordan, that fear is gone now. Hey, I'm a swimmer. I can do this. So that's awesome. Congratulations. And I'm going to hold you to it, getting lessons or doing something to move that forward.
Okay.
That's what I force all the interviewees to do that. They tell me what they're afraid of, and I'm like, go do it.
You got a deal, brother.
All right. Send me pictures.
Will do.
It's all about accountability.
Yes, sir.
Some of the most powerful words in the English language are those that follow the phrase, I am. Finish that statement.
I am enlightened with all the love that I have around me.
Beautiful. What's your biggest weakness?
Biggest weakness? Not something I want to verbally agree on, but something that I do struggle with is perfectionism, this perfectionist syndrome. And I'm constantly fighting it, especially with my writing and authoring certain things. But just being aware of it, being aware of resistance. And there's a great book. It's called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, where he dives into that. He calls it resistance. And for myself, I just call it the creative mind's perfectionism. Like if I draw something and I frame it and I put it on the wall, I want to rip it right off the wall the next day, and I see some imperfections and I want to fix it.
A lot of peak performers suffer that same fate. What would you tell them? What's some of the techniques that they could use?
For starters, definitely framing it, putting it up on the wall, and just staring at it and being okay and having this affirmation that rough draft moves, rough draft processes will evolve to not perfectionism, but evolve to more of a creator instead of a perfectionist. Nothing in the universe is perfect. There is no line in the universe that's perfect. This is scientifically proven. And even those lines on the freeways, they're not straight. I know, I used to help paint them, trust me. They're not straight. Nothing in the universe is perfect. So we need to get over that. And it's the beauty of our imperfection that makes us who we are. When you draw a face, one eye is bigger than the other, right? Same thing with us. Our legs, one of our legs sometimes is longer than the other. Same with our arms. We should bask in the imperfection. That is beauty. Imperfection is beauty. I would jump on that mantra.
I love that. Awesome. That concludes part 1 of our interview. You just heard from someone that was in a very dark place, and in a short period of time, turned everything around. And each one of us have our own stories. And this episode marks the 50th episode of Peak Performers. And I want to do something a little different today. And that is, anyone that is listening to this podcast, and we've got 1,000 listeners around the world, if you send me an email to info@thorconklin.com, I will carve out 10 minutes for a discussion on anything that you want to discuss. Whether it's the ultimate success map, something going on in your life, your business, it doesn't matter. I want to hear from you, the listener. And there's only one thing that I'm asking in return, and that is just 30 seconds of your time to tell me what's one thing I can do to make this podcast just 1% better. Just one little tweak, one little thing that we can do to enhance your experience even more. That is my goal here, to continue to reach more people, but really serve the audience that's already here, and that's you. So thank you for your time. I don't take that lightly. And anyone that emails me, I'm going to carve out that time. It may take me a week or 2 weeks to be able to get to everybody, but I will schedule that time with you. If you haven't already had a chance, please go to iTunes and subscribe to the show. And most importantly, drop me an email. I'd love to hear from you. Until tomorrow, have an absolutely amazing day, and keep an eye out for part 2 of the interview with Vidal Cisneros Jr.